Said you need good whiskey in your life. Yeah, you need good whiskey.
Now, do you like sheds? Do you like whiskey? Does James Bond like whiskey? And do you like good company? If it's any of those applies, you're in the right place. It's Whisky Wednesday. It's 6 p.m. It's Mark here from Whisky Watch. And I've got the dubious pleasure of introducing Mr. Colin Dunn. He's a giant from the whiskey industry, Colin, and I'm fortunate enough to call him a friend. He lives every whiskey lover's dream, this fella. He merges his passion and his career into one by working as a whiskey ambassador for Diageo. So very good evening to you, Colin.
Good evening and welcome. Well, thank you for inviting me, Mark. It's a real pleasure to be
watching with us. So, yes, Colin, so I'm going to try and share a few pictures and things, which is going to be a bit of a challenge for me, but we'll see how we get on with these pictures.
I think we might have to bear with him.
It's a new one on me, this.
Is it your first podcast?
It's the first one like this, to be honest.
Right, okay.
I mean, I'm using Zoom, we're on Facebook Live.
Right.
Got some slides to share, you know, that sort of thing.
Live from the shed.
We're live in the shed.
In the shed.
We're in the Apples and Arms is where we're at, which was featured on Shed of the Year. Everybody's probably fed up of hearing about that, but you do get the odd person who's never heard of it. So yeah.
Oh, everybody's aware. This guy here, he entered the Shed of the Year, and of course, inside the shed, you've just seen it. It's full up of aquavita, eau de vie, Ushkavar, whiskey, and he's made it into almost like a private den. Can you just see? Look at all the bottles he's got behind him there.
It's a man cave.
Shed of the Year, mate. Shed of the Year.
It's Whisky Wednesday, so who better to speak with the world famous ambassador? We are going to do a live tasting. We've got 3 different whiskies to share with you, and we both got the same ones.
Let's get this show on the road, right?
Well, how about we do the Dalwhinnie Winter's Gold? Here we are. It's the highest and the coldest distillery in Scotland. So part of the Diageo group. Winter's Gold, so there's no particular age statement on this whiskey, but my understanding is, you correct me if I'm wrong, Colin, that the distillery only distilled this expression in the winter, so it's something like October to March.
Yeah, I mean, is
that right?
The way that things are working out in the whiskey trade, I mean, you've got to realize that nobody knows the answers when it comes to creating new flavors, if you will. Nobody knows the answers. They're experiments. And the most important people in my world are the blenders, the master blenders, the people who play around. At one time, as an industry, we told people that age is what matters. Older is better. It isn't.
I agree, yeah. It's a bit of a myth, isn't it?
It's like with anything in life. Listen, I'm 67 years of age. I was much better when I was 23, believe me, right? So just because a whiskey might say 50 years old on it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any good. I actually tasted a Talisker 50-year-old from an independent bottler a while back, and it was the worst Talisker I've ever tried because it had been in the wood too long. The tannins had taken over. It had dried out. It was like sour wood in the mouth. And yet, because it says on the label 50 years of age, they were able to charge a fair price. So age is a sign, and it gives you an indicator, but it doesn't give you a guarantee.
It also says, of course, with it being old, that the Angels have taken a lot of the share, so there's not that much. So it's rare in terms of quantity, not necessarily quality. That's what I always think.
Yeah. And so I can see why the advent of no age statements became quite popular. In fact, the first no age statement that we brought out, Diageo brought out, was Talisker 57 North.
All right, yeah, version.
I don't know whether do you remember trying that one?
I've had that. Yeah, it's really good. It's 57% proof, isn't it? Hence the name.
Yeah, 100%.
Happens to be a location of Skye as well. Yeah.
And
so
the other
this is golden colour. It's 43% now. I often wonder about what's the optimum strength for a whiskey, because obviously it bottles at 40% ordinarily, and this is 43. And I thought, well, does that 3%, that extra 3%, make a difference really?
I'll tell you what I think on what you've just said there. If you're going to mix it, it can make a heck of a difference. You know, I mean, at the moment, the whiskey highball is becoming incredibly popular for new drinkers, as well as people who want a refreshing drink with a different taste profile. So strength does matter. And at the end of the day, we're all individual. We've all got our own palates, which means that you're going to choose whether you add water or not. I know there's people in the world that I mix with who like their whiskies at cask strength. It's just not for everybody.
It's right, isn't it? And the same with what you think of whiskey. My old man used to say, "There's no such thing as a bad whiskey. It's just that some are better than others." And he's quite right, really, isn't he? You know,
I mean, this Dalwhinnie here. So the experiment was, listen, we make a big thing about its location in the Central Highlands near the Cairngorm Mountains, virtually in the middle of nowhere. You know the name.
Yeah, I've been.
You know the name is all about the meeting place in Gaelic, where the old shepherds used to bring the sheep to be sold, and they'd have a dram or two or three afterwards. And the reality is, the whiskey category is growing so much that we've got to play in different fields. So how do you bring people into whiskey? In the old days, when I was growing up, I'd be given incredibly big, powerful whiskies that were high in alcohol, and people were giving them to me just to see the reaction. And it was like, go on, try this. It's 61.6. Those days are gone. So the Dalwhinnie Winter's Gold, when it first came out, I'm a huge fan of Dalwhinnie. In fact, if you said to me what's in my top 10 whiskies, almost my number one choice, in fact, sometimes it is the Dalwhinnie Distillers Edition, which has been racked into a second barrel maturation. Oloroso. It's probably the nearest thing to a Japanese sort of Karazoa style, rich, silky fruit, perfume nose.
Yeah.
You know, the wood might be different with Mizunara over in Japan, but the balance on the Distillers Edition is right up my street.
Yeah, I mean, this one's nice. It's very fragrant on the nose.
Like heathery, flowery.
Yeah,
I mean, you could almost put that into an atomizer and use it as air freshener.
You could. And if you're short of aftershave, you could dip your fingers in it and say, today I am wearing Dalwhinnie.
But just to give you an idea, with the Dalwhinnie, I actually gave it to, I put it in the freezer. I put it in the freezer and I served it up. My daughter said to me, she wasn't really a big whiskey fan. And I thought, I've got to try to convert her. Excuse me. And I put the Winter's Gold in the freezer, served it up over Ben and Jerry's dark chocolate cookie ice cream.
Oh, nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Of course, it comes out of the freezer and it's almost like, it looks like glue. You know, it's so thick and viscous. And you pour it over the chocolate ice cream, and the combination of the two works really well. And she loved it. You know, she loved it. You don't have to drink it neat. I personally drink my whiskeys neat about 80% of the time, but the other 20 I'm playing around. So this is a great beginner.
Pot of water. Right. So go on then. Let's have a lesson in how we should taste this. Go on.
I mean, I always think that, I remember when I started with the Japanese, I asked the master distiller, how do you drink your whiskey? And he said, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end. There's a nose, there's a mouthfeel, and there's a finish.
And have a taste of this.
So when you're looking at the Dalwhinnie here, often I like doing, if I'm hosting a Dalwhinnie tasting, I'll have two complete opposites, like the Distillers Edition and the Winter's Gold, so that you can actually nose and taste the difference between the styles. Because when you're just tasting one on its own, you know, you're listening to the words that I'm using. They may not necessarily be the words that you're using. I know at training sessions that I do, I ask the bartenders to write down their own descriptions. You know, you don't need to go on the internet and use somebody else's descriptions.
You don't need to be.
Use your own. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how silly it is. 20 years ago, yes. But now, you know, sometimes when I'm tasting or nosing a whiskey, and this happens with Talisker all the time, it reminds me of my childhood.
Mm.
The nose reminds me of clearing out the fireplace
Yeah.
pre-central heating here. I'm going back to the 50s, right?
Yeah.
My dad said to me, your one job is to go and clean the fireplace out every morning. And that smell, that burnt, ashy smell, when I pick up Talisker 10, that's what I get.
That's the thing, isn't it? It does evoke memories of people and places and times.
Yeah.
And as I remember Dalwhinnie, and my dad used to talk about that. And of course, what noise does a horse make? It makes a whinny, doesn't it? I remember Dalwhinnie.
Very good.
He said this white horse walked into a pub one day, said to the barman, "Can I have a whiskey, please?" The barman said, well, "We don't get many white horses in, but yeah, what would you like? We've got Bells, we've got Bat 69, we've got Glenfiddich, we've got all these different single malts." He said, "In fact, we've even got one named after you." And he said, "Well, go on then, I'll have a large Dobbin, please." That's one of my dad's old jokes.
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
definitely a dad joke right
you
there.
can tell.
So going back to tasting this whiskey,
Yes,
right?
apple I get on the nose.
So on the nose, it's light, it's heathery,
Yeah,
a touch of honey.
yeah.
These are at Dalwhinnie the wood maturation for roundabout. I'm not going to give the exact number because I don't know, but the vast majority of casks that Dalwhinnie New Make Spirit is going into are refill or first fill bourbon barrels. And with the cold weather, it's a very slow maturation in the Central Highlands. And you find that the bourbon quality that's been left in the cask from its previous incumbent has left that lighter, sweeter note, because the oak at this stage of Dalwhinnie's life, the oak has not tamed the grain. It hasn't tamed the malted barley. The barley hasn't turned into a Barley Davidson yet. It's still developing slowly. The wood.
I do like the nose on this, I must say, and that's one tip that you gave me many years ago, was to just take your time with it, you know, to just dive straight in. But we should have a little taste of it now. Mm.
So just to finish on the Dalwhinnie,
Yeah.
when you get to the taste, when I drink whiskey, I normally take about 10 seconds on the first sip. I want to find out whether I need to add anything to it, whether it's the right strength. And I can only do that by giving it time to express itself in the mouth. As a beginner, it can be hard. And I do suggest, if there is anybody who's just beginning, you might want to start off with tasting it at, say, 30% alcohol. Just add a few drops of still water to take away the burn. You may get to love it as time moves on, but in my early days of development, I did not want full-on alcohol. I remember speaking to Jim McEwen when he was at Bamora, pre-Brookladdy. He said to me that he didn't normally like drinking any whiskey over 52%. He thought that was really the level. But we're all different, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's people out there who love Octomore, you know, which comes in at nearly 60 odd percent.
Yeah.
As I said, these are, for want of a better word, Marmite whiskies. They are either the best thing that you've ever tried, or this is not my cup of tea. And that ultimately is about the whiskies that we're trying. For example, the Dalwhinnie.
Yeah.
It's light, it's fragrant, it's easy on the palate.
Yeah.
And the big thing, if you are looking at putting out a young age statement, it's not expensive in relation to other whiskey.
Right. It's not 15 years old like the sort of entry expression for Dalwhinnie. It's good value. It's a really nice little dram.